Hi, my name's Dan. This video is one in a series of videos that give an introduction to the Unreal Engine and specifically to level editing. And this is aimed at pretty much at newcomers to Unreal. This is maybe a slightly more complicated video in some ways, but you know, hold on to your hats, it's not too bad. And in this video I want to talk about speed issues with the Unreal Engine. So this mirrors a video that's already on my channel that was done in Unreal Engine 4. I think it was probably 4.26 is the most recent version that I've done. So now we're in Unreal 5, and interestingly, some of the things that I had to say then have changed because there's been some new innovations in Unreal 5. So the first thing I want to show you is how to have a look at what's going on in a frame. There's a whole lot of complicated things going on in the Unreal Engine, of course. It's a very complex piece of software. But there is a way to get a frame capture in terms of how long each individual process has taken. And there's a shortcut set of keys. You can't see my hands, so I'm going to describe. I'm going to hold Control and Shift and then press comma. And this is on Windows machines, obviously. And this brings up this GPU visualizer, which you can then see kind of the different things. Understanding it, of course, is another matter, but some of this is, you can see there's quite a bit of time taken on lights, and you can expand stuff down in the bottom. You can highlight things. I can't remember if double clicking does anything. No, it just opens and closes. So that gives you an idea of what's going on, and it's a first port of call. If you've got something that's slowing your project down, then this is a place you can look and see what's going on. You can get, I believe, a lot more detail than this, but I haven't dug into that in any great depth. So there were, in Unreal 4, there were two classic things that would cause speed issues and slowdown, even for relatively small projects. And these were the two things that I would often see with students where they were struggling. What I'm going to do is I'm going to close this down and look at this environment we've got here. So what I've done is I've created an environment here, and I've put in a lot of point lights. Okay, there's about 200 of them, just under that, 193. And in previous versions of Unreal, this number of point lights would probably give you slowdown. It depends on your scene, it depends on your the number of things that you've got that are being lit, and it depends, of course, on the power of your computer that you're using. But the issue was, at this point, that if you put a light into a scene, by default, it's set. So let's, hopefully my zooming is working. Looking down here, the mobility is has been the important thing. So there are three settings here. So movable means a light is, you can move it around, you can change the color and the intensity, you can switch it on and off, and things like that. Stationary is a slightly less useful thing, but slightly faster, in that you can't move it around, but you can change the color and the intensity, and with directional lights, the angle, I believe. And then this third option here, static, is light that doesn't change whilst the game's running. And what it allows is for the lighting to be baked. So that means where the textures, where things are being rendered, it allows Unreal to pre-calculate all that lighting, and it just saves a whole lot of time, potentially. However, so now, firstly say that the lights by default are stationary, and in previous versions of Unreal, it would save you a lot by going to static. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom back out, because with this number of lights in the scene, I'm pretty sure in previous versions of Unreal this would be causing problems. But if I go in now, it's a little bit slow, but it's not that bad, actually, considering. And in preparation for this video, obviously I tried things out, and I went in and turned all these lights onto static, and found that the pre-baked lighting wasn't there, and you couldn't see anything. And I scratched my head for quite a long time and tried to work out what was going on. So what is actually going on is that Unreal has a new lighting technique called Lumen, and Lumen is much faster than the lighting has been previously, and I believe more detailed as well, and it particularly works with their new nanite technology as well. I'm not going to try and explain that because I don't particularly understand it. Same with Lumen. So it means that stationary lights and presumably mobile lights as well, movable lights, are much faster to be calculated. But Lumen doesn't work with pre-baked lighting. So if you want to use pre-baked lighting, then you need to switch Lumen off. And that can be done in the project settings. I'm kind of going into detail stuff about lighting. I'll just show you this quickly because I don't want to go into too much detail. So in project settings, and if you just type in Lumen, it appears here, which is the dynamic global illumination method, and you can change that from Lumen to none if you want to switch off Lumen, and then your pre-baked lighting will work. But having said that, is much less of an issue, it seems to be. So the other thing that has I've seen causing issue with students is geometry objects. And if you get a lot of geometry objects in your scene, I've got a fair few in here, but again, I'm not getting a huge issue. I've got a lot of box brushes. So these are quite straightforward brushes, to be honest, with the shape. I do have, let's see, a couple of hundred at least of these in the scene, I think. Yeah, just over 200. And as you see, it's kind of running okay. But if you're having those speed issues, it may be that the problem is that you've got too many geometry objects or too many complex geometry objects. And the way to speed that up is to change your geometry objects into static meshes. And in fact, one thing that's going on here is that each of these brushes will be being individually calculated, because it's possible to change the individual sizes and scales. But if you change to a static mesh, you're having a whole lot of things that are the same. The obvious thing to do is to have one static mesh and have lots of different instances of it in your scene, and that saves space. And static meshes are, although they're in some ways more complicated than geometry brushes, they're faster to render. Partly because your hardware is, modern GPUs do that natively very, very quickly. So I think the takeaways from this video are there are things that can slow you down even in small projects. Geometry brushes is probably still an issue, but lighting is less of an issue than it used to be. And I wanted to show you the Control-Shift, just to repeat that, which brings up this snapshot of one frame, so you can see what's going on, the different bits in that. So I don't want to go into a huge amount of depth. There's not a lot of detail there. If you are having issues that aren't easily solved by what I've described here, then you're going to have to go deeper yourself. So that's it from me for now.